actually technically 2 years old now. And I feel like it's still kind of one of the hottest games out right now. What do you think?
I'd say so, yeah.
Have you considered buying this game?
I have considered buying this game. There's a couple of games that have been higher on my list, so I have not yet purchased it. But this is another game that has performed very well for me over the year 2022, where when I first played it, I was like, okay. But now it's like, I miss this game. I want it in my library.
Hmm. That's good to hear. Makes me happy to hear. And that game, of course, could be nothing other than Dune Imperium.
Mm-hmm. This is like it's like your number 2 game, right?
It may or may not be, yes. Yeah, no, I love this game. My history with this game, actually with the whole Dune franchise in general, like it all started when I was sitting in a movie theater, all right? And I don't know what I was watching, probably something terrible. Um, and a trailer came on and I watched like the first 5 or 10 seconds of the trailer and I was like, whatever this movie is, I need to see it. It looks amazing. Because like the first, like I distinctly remember how like it's like Duncan Idaho like jumping out of one of the thopters onto the sand, and then it's Paul
Oh,
like in a
yeah.
room with the one of the mothers, and like aesthetically it just looked amazing, and the music and everything. And I was like, I don't know what this is yet, but I need to see whatever this movie is. And uh, yeah, when I found out it was Dune, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go read all the books. Well, not all the books, but I read the first 6,
Sure.
and I was completely just like drawn into the world. The books are amazing. I absolutely loved them.
Mhm.
It's very strange at times, but still very good books. And then when I saw that there was a game also, I was like, I need this game. It looks amazing. It's a card draft or not card drafting, deck building and worker placement game, which I thought was cool.
Hmm.
And it just looked amazing too, I thought. And so I just bought the game also and fell in love with the game and the franchise and yeah, everything.
Yeah. Cool story, bro.
That's my ode to Dune, the Dune franchise. What
Uh,
is your history with this franchise, if anything?
so I'd seen a friend on Facebook share the trailer about Dune, and I had no idea what it was. I'd never heard of Dune, but I could tell by the way he shared it that this gentleman was extremely excited about it. And it's like the more people I talked to or encountered, they seemed to be aware of like what this thing was going to be. I'm like, what? Okay, what is this interesting sci-fi thing I've never heard of that apparently has some sort of cult following
Yeah,
behind it? Um, and you know what? I think my first experience with it was the game because the game came out before the movie was
it
actually
did.
out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I guess it kind of left my radar for a while, and then you got the game, and then I played the game with you. And I remember you kind of explaining some of the thematics of like what the show, not the show, what the movie and the book is about based off of what you encounter in the game. And I was like, oh, okay, that's kind of interesting. But then like time went on and the hype continued to build for the movie. So I went and saw the movie and I was like, okay, this is pretty dope. This
yeah.
is a good movie. This is an insane universe. So pretty soon after that, I read the book and I got the whole story. I think I read Dune Messiah after that too. I know I read a second book. I'm not really sure which one it was.
Very impactful,
Yeah,
obviously.
yeah. And so I think that made me appreciate the game more, probably. But then even just playing the game multiple times after that, it made me enjoy the mechanics of the game more too. So you've got sort of this double threat coming on of like the theme is compelling. Like it's Paul Atreides. Look, there's Duncan Idaho. You can do these cool things. Mixed with like just the way worker placement is used in that game, where you only have 2 guys, and eventually you can at a high price get your third guy. But then there's the mentat that you can also move around as an extra neutral worker. But then on top of that, you have a semblance of deck building that's not as strong as some other deck builder games are, but that's okay because it doesn't need to be that strong. But then on top of that, you've got this not really a war game, but just sort of you're vying for control for these battles every round, and you can try to win the round and get points, or you can try to purposely get second place without committing too much of your resources, and you can still get a bonus. Yeah, the main thing that turned me off of the game originally was the whole get 10 points and the game is over. And usually the person that got 10 points wins. And you know that I'm just not the biggest fan
Right, for sure. Yeah.
of win conditions like that. But I guess it's just kind of grown on me over time. That's my Dune testimony.
That was amazing, Cody, because not only did you give me your Dune testimonial, but you also explained the game at the same time.
That's what I was thinking, man. Yeah.
You're like, here's my history with the Dune universe, and also let me explain how the game works.
Yeah.
Seamless. And it really was seamless too. That was amazing, Cody. Very smooth.
Hey, thanks. Hey, what if we just submitted this segment of the podcast to the guys that do the really terrible announcement videos for the expansions?
Okay. All right. We got to take a real quick pause here. I have already mentioned this, I think maybe once on the podcast, but if you want a good couple laughs, go find the announcement video for either, I mean, preferably the Rise of Ix expansion, but also the Immortality expansion, either one. Go watch the announcement video for those and you will laugh. That's all I'm going to say.
Look at their dead eyes.
Okay, well, be nice, because one of those guys is the designer, all right? And he did a very good job, actually. He did a very good job.
Okay. The other guy didn't.
But anyways, yeah, so it is a worker placement game. It's a little strange as you only have 2 workers every round. But it's also deck building. And I think they blend very well. The deck building is really slow though. A lot of people who maybe don't have too much exposure to deck building might instantly think of Dominion, where every single round you're buying a card, but rounds are really quick. Like every single turn, you're buying a card. And you might end up with a deck of start with a deck of 10 cards and you might end with a deck of 35, 40, maybe even more, maybe even 50 cards, depending on the game. Yeah. This game is not like that at all. There's much, much less deck building because there's only going to be, 10 rounds tops. So you're not going to buy more than probably 10 cards anyways. You might get more than that, but probably not. So it's a much, much slower deck builder, but the cards are so cool and so powerful that it really makes up for it. In that sense, I think, Dominion has some cool and powerful cards, but most of them are pretty, they rely more on the combos that they'll make throughout. And as you build your deck up, you'll get more of those combos. This relies less on that and more on, here's some really cool, powerful cards that interact with the board more also. And I don't know if you want to maybe I should, maybe you, if you want to, you can maybe kind of explain what bridges the gap between the worker placement section and the deck building section.
Yeah, you've played it more than me, so I'll let you cover that.
Okay. I just don't want to dominate the conversation since this is kind of more fine. Of my baby.
I did the amazing seamless intro, so
you did, Cody. Which I feel like I don't know. I feel like after you mentioned it twice, we've each mentioned it now. It's somehow less seamless, but
dang it, we broke it.
What's cool is that the cards are basically all double use. You can either, whenever you place a worker on the board, you have to play a card in conjunction with that worker. And the card will tell you what areas of the board you're allowed to place a worker. But if you use the card to place a worker, you will not be able to use that card for anything else this round. And so you play a card, put a worker out. And then on your next turn, you play a card, put a worker out. And then you have generally 3 cards left over that you'll get to play for a different ability. And so that in and of itself creates a plethora of interesting situations where you have, I don't know how many different sections on the board, at least 7 or 8 different sections. And you might really need to do something on the board, but the only card that lets you do it, you might want to use that card for whatever the card's ability is. Yeah. And so you have to make these difficult decisions, like what's more important, basically. Like doing that thing I want to do on the board or using this card for its ability. To me, that's kind of one of the highlights is that decision-making process that goes into placing your workers on the board or saving your cards is really, really cool.
Yeah. I know you hate this game, but it makes me think of Race for the Galaxy in that manner.
Okay, here's the difference. Actually, I was thinking about this today because I listened to your interview with Tom Lehman. And I think what I dislike is cards that can just be that they're technically double use, but the second use is just kind of as fodder. You know what I mean? Like actually Evolution has the same thing that I was just describing, where cards can just be used to generate food, or they can just be used to increase body size or increase population size, that you don't actually
Yeah.
use them for what they do. So they're technically multi-use, but really it's like, well, you can use the card for what it does, or there's these few general uses where you can just kind of plug it in and it does this thing no matter what card it is.
Mm-hmm.
Dune Imperium is different, where it's like, okay, you can use this card and send a worker onto these different spots that the card specifies, or this card has this other special ability that you can use, right? And so it's not just like, well, it's either you do it for its special ability or it's just a resource, you know? It's a little bit more special than that, I think.
Yeah, I suppose it's the difference between opportunity cost and just having multifunction cards, multifunction
Y-
abilities.
yes, yes. Because I feel like in games like Race for the Galaxy, it's like, well, just which cards basically do you want to trash to
Mm-hmm.
generate resources or whatever, you know? In Dune, the cards have multi-uses, and those multi-uses are special in and of themselves. Not just having one special use and one just general use that you can plug any
Yeah,
card in, you know?
that's true. Multi-use cards is seems like it's a rising niche that is quite effective. A lot of the West Kingdom games use that concept, at least for like
Yeah, they definitely
pa-
do.
paladins, architects. I think kind of does that by counts, where you have these townsfolk, especially, or maybe enemies that you're attacking, that they can be used in different ways depending on how, I guess, your play style, your strategy, or even what specific action you want to take to use the top part of the card or the bottom part of the card. It's really a genius mechanic to be used.
Yeah, and the West Kingdom games are interesting because they're generally like, you have to make the decision when you acquire the card. You can either
Hmm.
acquire it this way and get this kind of immediate thing, or you can acquire it that way and add it to your deck or do this with it. Like in a game like Dune, it's like every time the card comes up, you're making a decision about how you want to use it. In the West Kingdom games, it's like, oh, as soon as you get that card, you're making the decision definitively. Either the card is going to be this or it's going to be that, you know?
Hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting. I like it. There's different ways to do it. You can even like even the Race for the Galaxy way, where it's like, okay, it has a special use or it has a general use. That's also, I mean, it's even in Race for the Galaxy, it's more interesting than just having cards that you can only do one thing with generally, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, it makes it shine. Now, this is just it's just kind of lobbing the ball up for you, just an easy alley oop. But Nate, what
Okay.
what do you like about Dune Imperium?
What do I like about Dune Imperium? I think what shines the most is what I've already mentioned is deciding how to use your cards. Um, I'm actually a really big fan of the aesthetic and the art and the
Hmm.
production and really kind of everything about that with this game. Um, I love that the art is based on the movie, but I really love that it's not screen captures from the movie, but it's artist renditions. And when you look at the characters, you can still see, okay, that's Jason Momoa, that's Timothy Chalamet,
Hmm.
whatever. But it looks really good. It's very well done. The kind
That
of
is what Arc Nova should have done, homie.
I'm not
You
going
know,
to get
with
into that right now.
with their chintzy, weird half
Listen, here's
picture,
the thing,
half
Cody.
drawing card art. What?
We can both agree that Terraforming Mars is worse, right?
Hmm. I'll
Okay.
agree that
Well,
Race for the Galaxy is the worst.
okay, that's fair. That's very fair. That's very fair.
Yeah.
Um, but when this game came out, people also complained about the game board being boring, and I actually quite like it. I think there's, in generally, it's kind of mostly black and brown because it's kind of a zoomed out like Arrakis in space, and so
Yeah.
like a lot of the board is the brown of Arrakis, and the rest is kind of the black of space. But then there's actually a lot of colors going on because there's so many different parts of the board that you can go, and those are sectioned by color, kind of. And so there is actually a fair amount of color on the board, but in general, the whole board does kind of have a dismal, dark appear, and even kind of a matte look and texture as well. And I actually think it works really well for the game because that's kind of
Yeah.
the point. Like it's kind of Arrakis is kind of this like it's just a desert planet in space. Like there's
Hmm.
nothing special about it. And I feel like that really kind of comes across. And it also makes you appreciate more like the spice tokens and the water tokens, which are bright orange and nice light blue.
Yeah.
They really kind of stand out from, the rest, a lot of the other components in the game.
And the player colors too, like I'm looking at a screenshot of it here, and they actually are the classic red, yellow, green, blue, but they're all kind of a like a matte color in a sense, almost a dusty hue to
Yeah,
sort of
yeah.
match the appearance of Dune and the aesthetic of it all.
The red is kind of a light burgundy. The blue is a deep blue. The green, I feel like there's not too much special about it necessarily, but
A
I
little dark.
personally love the yellow because it's kind of a like caramel gold. I absolutely love it.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
sand, kind of
Like what? Sand?
like sand. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So yeah, I absolutely. I am a really big fan of how the game looks and feels for sure. And of course, there is the deluxe upgrade pack where you can replace all those with minis, which I'm sure is cool. I'm not sure if I want to spend like the $40 or whatever just for some minis, but I'm
Mm.
sure it would be cool. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, but I like that there's a fair amount of moving up tracks in this game. And
Ooh.
basically, there's
Yeah.
4 different houses that you can gain influence with if you send your worker to one of their spots. And so whenever that's even cooler. It's like you play a card, you send a worker to one of the spots of these houses. They each have 2 spots for each house. And if you go to one of those, the spot you pick has an action, but just for going on a spot from that house, you also move up on their track, their influence
Mhm.
track, which all of those 4 tracks are kind of a little race in a way. Like if you move up twice, you get a point, but if you move up 4 times, you get a temporary point, which you'll keep as long as nobody passes you up on that track, which is really
Mhm.
cool, I think. Um, and so I love that also. And I think it's weird. I don't want to compare this to Catan, but I mean, base Catan and this are both a race to 10 points. And both of these kind of have this feeling like you're really excited when you get a point. Like it means a lot when you get a point. When you move up
Yeah.
twice on a track and you get a point, it's like, whew, okay, I earned that. That's good. 1 point. I'm literally 10% of the way there already, you know? Um, I think that's kind of a fun feeling too, as opposed to like a Castles of Burgundy game where you routinely are getting 5 or 10 points on a turn, sometimes even
Yeah.
more, sometimes 40, 50 points on a turn, you know. Um, it's a very, very different feel. You value the points more, and it's a
Yeah,
little more
there's more
special when you earn them.
yeah, there's more of a focus that comes with it, which I really like.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
often you don't see that in games where you have well, I mean, this game also has a whole bunch of options. You can approach the game in different ways. So many different, like you said, 7 plus, probably more than that, like worker areas, not just spaces. And depending on the player card that you have, can determine something of your play style, or those intrigue cards can be different ways they're going to be affecting the game. But even
Yeah.
so, like you said, it's not like you're going to get 5, 10, 15 points on a turn. You've got to be focusing on how specifically are you going to get your individual points to get you up to 10 or more.
Yeah, and some of them you can get just by doing things, but some of them have to be got by defeating your opponents, whether it's on those
Yeah.
tracks passing them up, or whether it's in the combat that's happening on the side.
Hmm.
Um, you're not gonna. It's I'm not gonna say you're not going to, but it's difficult to to win the game to get to 10 points without taking some of those points from other people, whether
Yeah.
it's in combat or passing up on tracks. It'd be very difficult to do, I think. Um, but I'm glad you mentioned the intrigue cards because I kind of forgot about those, which is funny because actually, like, I'm not a professional at this game by any means, but I have played it quite a bit, and I will say that the intrigue cards feel kind of like the key to the game for me. I feel like the
Hmm.
more intrigue cards you can get your hands on in this game, the better chance you have because they have so many powers. Some of them are really lame. Like you get it and you're like, wow, 3 spice. Okay, I can play this card and get 3 spice. That kind of sucks, you know. But then you have
It
some.
depends.
I mean, sure, 3 spice can be a huge deal sometimes, but there are other ones that are like as soon you like get the card and you read it and you're like, this could be game changing if I play this in the right situation, you know. Especially the ones
Hmm.
that mess with combat a little bit, like yeah, the intrigue cards are really amazing. Or you can even get points after the game ends. That's what I love. This game is technically a race to 10, but then people might have cards that score after the game ends, and you could actually
Yeah.
pass somebody up after they reach 10.
I love the resources in the game too. They're very limited, and so it makes you fight for them. And when you get resources, it feels good. You feel powerful, you know. Like
Yeah.
money is pretty limited in the game, and so you really have to decide, oh man, okay, am I going to spend this money and try to get my new worker, or am I going to spend it over here? And like I don't remember what else money's used for, but I remember it being sort of a mind bender at times with how you're going to deploy it on a given turn.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I think I don't like stressful games. And so as a general rule, when a game has limited resources, that kind of makes me worry a little bit.
Hmm.
But in this game, like it doesn't feel super stressful, but it definitely is stressful at times. And just that, not like you're pulling your hair out, but you're like, you really have to think. You really have to think a few
Yeah.
steps ahead. Like, okay, I can't just blindly throw resources here and there and just randomly make
Yeah.
decisions. Like, you really need to ponder, okay, I have gained these resources, like you just said. Okay, I've gotten these resources. What is the wisest way to use them? Because the
Yeah.
resources are so limited, which also, again, is very thematic as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, it matches the whole play style of the game too. Your workers are extremely limited. I mean, only having two workers with to a maximum of three. The cards you have are limited. You really have to decide which cards you want to use to play workers and which cards you want to reserve to fight with or to purchase other cards. It really is like very strongly an efficiency game, I think.
Yeah, an almost an efficiency puzzle, you might say.
You could indeed say that.
I would say that, actually. Would, could, and
Okay.
should.
Nate
Most likely
has
should.
just said that.
Dune Imperium is an efficiency puzzle. But also, you have to. I feel like you have to be able to pivot and to change directions in this game if you have to, also. Like, like you were saying, there are asymmetrical player powers. They impact the game a little bit. I don't think they impact it a ton. It's not like they make you have tunnel vision. Like you have to like if you don't focus on the strategy that it's nudging you towards, then you don't stand a chance. It's not like that.
Hmm.
Um, but I think that they're general enough that you can really kind of pursue whatever path to victory you want, and also can easily pivot and change paths to victory. Try something different if you have to, just based on the cards that come up in the market, or based on the things that other people do, or on a combat not going the way you expected, or whatever.
Yeah.
Based on the intrigue cards you draw, like you have to be able to change directions and just weasel your way up to those 10 points before somebody else does.
Yeah. One thing I forgot about is the ownership concept of worker places or worker spots. It's not on
Yeah,
all the spaces. There's only like I don't know, three or four places, but
yeah,
you can
three.
assign a banner, and then anytime anybody goes on that spot, you exclusively get a special bonus. That's not something you see very commonly in worker placement games.
It's not, and I really want to see it more because even in this game, it's not a very common occurrence. Like you might
Mm,
see a couple banners go out in a game throughout the course of the whole game. You might see a couple banners go out, and so those people might generate a couple of resources off of it, but that's it. I feel it's a really really small part, and I kind of wish it was a bigger part, honestly. And I would like to see that in other games more as a more involved part of the design for sure, because it is a cool
yeah.
concept that you can kind of somebody has to kind of pay a tax to you almost,
Yeah.
to go there.
An underutilized concept that we would like to see more.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Um, is there anything you do not like about this game? Anything that bothers you?
Hmm. I mean, originally it was just the point concept. I didn't like the race idea of I just have to fight and scrap for these points, and I could lose by the difference of a single point, or I could just do really bad and lose by a bunch of points, which has happened
Yeah,
before for me. But that's just kind of progressively changed. I don't know if it's just appreciating the thematics of the game more, or just appreciating the game itself, or I'm just maturing in my board game experiences, and I don't mind win conditions as much. So I know that's not really the thing I dislike about the game anymore. I think it would be nice if the player powers were a little bit more unique and strong. Granted, that can be difficult to balance, especially when the whole game is basically an efficiency puzzle, because you, at that point, really have to make sure that your different player abilities are equal and aren't going to get too out of balance in proportion to each other.
Yeah, definitely. It requires a lot of playtesting to ensure
Yeah,
that.
for sure. But I think that's maybe a spot that maybe a future expansion or something could add. Obviously,
Well,
I haven't played the newest expansion. Maybe it adds some more interesting player powers.
I mean, Rise of Ix, the first expansion, definitely does. I mean, you're right, and like I was also saying that the player powers are kind of general. They don't focus you down one path, and I wonder because in Rise of Ix, the player powers are more specialized and a little more interesting, and also more
Hmm.
complicated. Some of them, and they don't. They manage to be more specialized without giving you a narrow focus still,
Ah,
which
okay.
is cool, which is really cool.
I need to play that more then. I know I played it with you once, but I don't remember which
Yeah,
player I
the
used.
weird thing is when I had the Rise of X expansion, and I won't talk about the expansion too much here, but I think the first time I played it, I was really underwhelmed by it, like really, really underwhelmed.
Hmm.
But still, every time I played after that, I played with the expansion because why wouldn't I? It didn't make the game worse. I just didn't feel like it really enhanced the experience all that much. And the more I played it, the more it grew on me. And now, like the base game is still solid. It's still a very, very good game, but with the expansion in now that I've played it quite a few times, you really it just takes quite a few plays to really understand how it impacts the game and how to utilize what it brings to the game. I think both the game and the first expansion have pretty steep learning curves, or at least comprehension curves. Like it doesn't take that long actually to learn Dune. It's very simple. You play a card,
Hmm.
and whatever the card says, those are the places you're allowed to place a worker on the board. That's
Yeah.
pretty much it. But actually comprehending the game and understanding how to do well is much more difficult. And I think the Rise of X expansion was the same way. And so it took a few plays to really appreciate it.
Yeah. Any game that does that definitely goes up a notch automatically in my book because Brass is very much like that. I mean, granted, it's still hard to learn how to play,
Yeah.
but you can get to where, like, okay, well, I can put this tile on the board and I can take a loan and get money. Yay. But it can take some careful study to learn to how to play it well.
Yeah, I have a sneaking suspicion that I will never again beat you in Brass Birmingham. I think I won the very first time I played, and I've only played it twice now, and I know that
Huh.
you've played it much more than I, and I'm pretty sure I will probably never stand a chance of beating you again.
Well, here's the thing. I haven't played it in a while. Maybe I can make this commitment to not play it until I see you again, and then we'll have
Well,
an
that's
even
kind of a
match.
sad commitment, especially since it's one of your wife's favorite games.
Yeah, we're definitely going to play it before we see you again.
Yeah,